Baldurs Gate 3 has been blowing up, and the hype train just won't stop. But as to be expected, there is now a backlash happening against all of that hype. So we've had a couple of news cycles between the release date being pushed up and the virality of the bear clip from the panel from Hell, and then the series of tweets that led to the conversation of Baldurs Gate 3 being an anomaly that should not be the new standard for RPGs. So inevitably, as the hype has bubbled up, there have been people coming out to say that all of this hype is not good, it's not warranted, and that the game is dumb, and that we just shouldn't be talking about it. I've seen a lot of this backlash popping up both in my videos as well as in videos of other creators, and of course the place I've seen it the most is on TikTok, which if I had to bet is where to get the opinion of the average person. I'm going to be referencing a lot of comments that I've seen repeated many times across the internet now. I might put up some examples without the usernames. So the most common one I've seen is a comparison to Cyberpunk 2077, with people saying that, "You didn't learn your lesson with Cyberpunk, did you?" Which is a really strange thing to say. Firstly, Cyberpunk was probably the most highly anticipated game possibly ever. I'm sure there's statistics out there, but I don't remember them off of the top of my head. And even then, I'm sure that it would be contentious between a Rockstar game and Cyberpunk 2077. But what was overpromised in Cyberpunk compared to what was delivered is something that we have never seen and will never see again, because it taught everybody a very harsh lesson. A lesson that I hope we learn from, despite the game being in a very good state and people liking it now. Cyberpunk was broken. It did not function as a video game. It was almost unplayable in some circumstances, including on the previous generation consoles and on some PC builds. Baldurs Gate 3 is in early access and has been for the last 3 years. Specifically when it comes to the game functioning, we know that it functions, and people have played many hours of the final product and have said that it functions better than it does in early access. A lot of the problems with Cyberpunk on PC were related to different builds and rigs and how it was optimized to run on those things. And the good part about a game being playable for 3 years in early access is that it's been played by all sorts of people with all sorts of different PCs, because the game has sold very well in early access, and all of that feedback and data has been taken into account, factored in, and made sure that the game runs well. So I would say that the chances of this game being like Cyberpunk are 0, or as close to non-existent as possible. A different argument is if maybe the story isn't as good as we expect. I'm sorry, please don't kill me, but I think Divinity Original Sin 2 peaked quite early on in its story. Developers have said that that's not the intention with Baldurs Gate 3. They want it to be more of a constant progression up, and I hope that's true, but that really would not be the same comparison point as Cyberpunk. That would just mean that the story disappointed us in the end, but it would be one factor in a lot of the different positives that this game has going for it. So no, you can't compare apples to oranges. This has nothing to do with the Cyberpunk situation or with so many other games that have claimed to be revolutionary. This is backed by the previous experiences of the developer and by the things we've actually played. I've also seen a lot of criticism about the console versions taking longer to develop, and specifically the PS5 version being delayed to make sure it works at 60 FPS. How is that bad? This game is primarily developed on PC and then on consoles, and if it's a little bit delayed to make sure that it's well optimized for consoles, that isn't going to impact the quality of the game. People saying that the game is bad because it had to be pushed for 60 frames per second are ignoring the fact that the game is the game, and if it's unfortunately more buggy or performs worse on consoles, that still doesn't impact the game. Now, I don't think it's acceptable to have games perform badly, but if there were going to be games where that is more acceptable, it's definitely something turn-based. And as I've mentioned before, Larian as a studio has a track record of continuously working on games to make sure that they are perfect if anything isn't. So I really don't understand this one or how this can be considered a negative. The craziest one for me are the simultaneous attacks because of the release date on PC. So some people say that the game is not going to be good because the release date got moved up from the tail end of August all the way up to the 3rd of August, and that the game isn't finished and they're pushing it out the door. And you're gonna see that it's a buggy mess. When I'm pretty sure that normally when a dev or a studio or a publisher moves up a game, it releases it early. It's because it's so confident in the product and what it has that it doesn't need to wait. Then at the same time, people are saying that they had to move it because they're too afraid of Starfield and Armored Core. No shit! Everybody's afraid of those two. I'm surprised they aren't afraid of each other. Sure, there's a bit of time between them, but still fairly close. Baldurs Gate 3 is a very niche game, and I think that the smartest thing that they could have done is this release date chain. Because when it comes to distributing your time, if gaming is a hobby for you, especially when it comes to mass market appeal, not just you, a person who might really enjoy CRPGs, or not just you, a person who is thinking about dipping your toes into it. Everybody has a limited time. We have a limited time on this earth, so we have to make decisions on how we spend it. I was intending to play all 3 of these games because I wanted to make videos on them. And I'm sure many other people really wanted to play them, but if you have to press people down, especially the average consumer, on where they have to allocate their time, if you have all 3 of these games releasing at the same time, Baldurs Gate loses. I don't know who wins, but I know Baldurs Gate loses. So giving it this space and the opportunity for people to talk about it, especially on PC, get some reviews out, and then blow up on September 6th with the console release on PS5 and then with the Xbox release, that's the smartest thing they could have done. And it gives the game an honest chance to shine not only critically, as I'm sure that it will shine within the community and within the critics, but to have a shot at reaching a wider player base. Because it's in this empty no man's land, it's apparently leeching off of a lot of the negativity towards Diablo 4 right now. That's good. I want people to play awesome games, and I want people that have never played a game like this to give it a try. How can you think that this is bad when all it is incredibly smart, and they are lucky that the game is in such a state that they can move up the release date and take advantage of this? Seriously, guys, this is a CRPG, the 3rd one in a franchise that most people in the average mainstream have never heard of. I keep coming back to something like The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 blew up tremendously, despite being similar to Baldur's Gate 3 in a lot of ways. So I think this game has a real shot at being the next big thing, but not if it's going to compete directly with the next game from the people who made Elden Ring and Starfield, which is for the first time somebody saying Skyrim in space, but it's the people who made Skyrim. So that's gonna sell gangbusters, and on top of selling gangbusters, it's gonna occupy the time of a lot of players because it's on Game Pass. So even if the sales aren't tremendous, it's still going to take away sales from other games because people are going to be busy placing their time into Starfield. So congrats to Larian for having a great product on their hands and also making the smartest decision possible to make it have the biggest splash possible. Because this game would not be a quarter as big as it is if it were releasing the same day as Starfield or the same day as Armored Core. And finally, all the people saying that turn-based sucks. Well, that's your opinion, but I don't think you gain anything by saying that. And more importantly, how do you know? I've said it before, I think people are shying away from this game because of the isometric camera or the turn-based strategy combat. This isn't a JRPG, and I love JRPGs, but this isn't one of those types of combat systems. This is a much different beast, and I suspect that a lot of people that are saying this have not played it. They haven't tried it, given it an honest try, and maybe if they have tried it, they did it already with a biased conception of it, wanting to not like it. And that to me is incredibly sad, because at the end of the day, I want everybody to find the thing that they love the most and enjoy it, and I think a lot of people don't know that they love this. I think a lot of it is a younger generation. It's true that we live in a world where our attention spans are decreasing by the second, and I get that. My attention span decreases by the second as well. But I still very much enjoy a turn-based experience. I like building my party, understanding all of the skills available to me, planning a strategy out and then executing it to perfection. That makes me feel very good. And I think it would make a lot of other gamers feel really good, and they just don't know it. So next time you're thinking about commenting, turn-based combat sucks, firstly remember that it's your opinion, but also remember, what do you gain by typing that comment out? If you try it and love it, you gain something you didn't have before. And if you try it and don't love it, well, I'm sure there's bigger losses than the small time investment you might have put in. However, typing out that comment does nothing for nobody and is time that you will never recover. Just don't miss out on something that maybe you could love. If you like this video, I have more lore videos on Baldur's Gate 3 coming up real soon, along with some other bangers, so make sure to subscribe. If you liked anything in this video or you have any counter arguments, make sure to leave either of those in the comments below. And if somebody pops up with any of these comments elsewhere, you can send them over to this video. I'm Mug Thief, and I'll see you on the internet.